We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
This year may be the most consequential in recent history for the United States Supreme Court. With both abortion and gun rights on the docket and a 6-3 conservative split on the bench, the laws of the land may be in for a long overdue facelift. But to help us pass the good from the bad, we're joined once again by Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor and host of the excellent Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza. Welcome back, Scott.
You know, Mark, thank you so much for the welcome back. I was caught when you said the 6-3 split on the bench, because as we move along, it seems more like it's 5, 1, and 3, and the one being the Chief Justice of the United States. Exactly right, Justice John Roberts, and where he comes down on things is yet to be, firmly cemented.
All right, so Scott, let's dive right into this. There's two big cases coming up. There's one on abortion and there's one on gun rights. Let's start with the gun rights. Now, this is New York Rifle and Pistol Association. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the name of the group sponsoring the suit, basically. Okay,
and what does the suit involve here?
Mark, the case is basically will decide whether or not, hopefully, I'll say this, by the way, because sometimes the Supreme Court justices like to dispense with a case without addressing the fundamental constitutional issue that the parties who bring the case hope they will address. So there's that. We may not get the decision that we want, meaning a resolution on this issue. But the idea is, can a state deny somebody's application to carry a firearm for any reason at all? So is it a right to keep and bear arms outside the home? That's one way to kind of encapsulate what the case is about. The way the law reads now is states are permitted by current case law to basically deny people's attempts to get a license to carry for any reason or no reason at all. And the proponents of the lawsuit basically want to establish that states, in order for them to deny permission to carry, must have a good reason to deny it, like somebody's a felon or some other nefarious, incident in their past which would lead them to be unfit, rather than just the state doesn't like when people carry guns outside the home.
So let's get a little bit speculative, and I know you hate this, but realistically, this is the first big gun case since Heller, which was quite some time ago, right?
It promises to be the first big gun case in Heller, and that's the part about the speculation, because they could avoid the big decision through some resolution about a procedural matter or some standing issue. I don't think that that's going to happen, by the way, but I always like to talk about it because, as I say, I think very often, if you expect to be disappointed, that's the most likely thing that, your expectations are most likely to be met with the United States Supreme Court, no matter what your, political inclinations or legal inclinations are.
Yeah, we have noticed over the last few years, I guess, that often when you're expecting some kind of bright line ruling, what you get is, well, it's now a moot point, so let's just dismiss the case out of hand.
Or you get a non-bright line ruling, which doesn't allow for real clarity going forward. So I would say the Heller case and the McDonald cases are both on point there. What do they then mean, right? When Heller came out, I was discussing it with people and thought this is like a lawyer's full employment act, because for the next generation, we're going to be seeing cases come up because they didn't issue a bright line rule about what the court actually means when they say it's a fundamental right. What standard of review, for instance, gun cases need to meet. That would be, just for people who are wondering, what would the bright line rule be? It might be, in order to implement a gun regulation, governments have to pass a hurdle here and a hurdle there, for instance. But they didn't offer that guidance. And so that's why we're still struggling now in 2022 with understanding what that fundamental right means.
So here's where my speculation just becomes rampant, Scott. Should the Supreme Court rule in favor of New York Rifle and Pistol, what does this mean for gun rights across America if they offer a bright line ruling?
Depending upon what that ruling is, if it's as broad and sweeping as the litigants, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association want, and what people like me who are gun rights advocates want, Mark, is it would basically shut down and decimate all gun licensing schemes that don't involve a concrete understanding that you have to have forfeited your right to carry a gun through some action, rather than the current status, which is you kind of have to prove that you're okay to carry a firearm. You think about it like a burden shifting, sort of like how driver's licenses are issued in the United States of America, which is anybody who can pass the test gets the license, right? With some exceptions for people who have, like, if you got like some medical diagnosis, you have a seizure disorder, perhaps they can, say you can't have a license because we don't know if you're going to be a safety on hazard on the road. And the same thing would be true basically for gun licenses. So if you haven't been convicted of a crime of violence or otherwise indicated in a provable way that you're going to be a danger to yourself and others, you are entitled by right then to carry a firearm. And so what that would mean is the entirety of New York, especially New York City, which is hostile to gun rights, New Jersey, and California, those are the most populous places where we're going to see all those people now have access to carrying a firearm outside the home. And previously, it currently, as we record today, Mark, is if you're well connected, you get this right. So if your brother-in-law is the mayor, or you're a celebrity or something like that in these places, you can usually get a hookup. But if you're just John Q. Public and you're running a corner store bodega in New York or a Quickie Mart in LA, you're out of luck, or just somebody who wants to be able to protect themselves in the light of, you see these scenes in Los Angeles, Mark, with these homeless drug addicts that are often antisocial in terms of their personality, and have a propensity towards violence, one much greater than the population at large. And the response times for the police are, of course, laughably long, right, if they ever come at all. So just the kind of everyday personal defense choices that people get to make in many places in the United States, they will now be provided to all these Californians, New Yorkers, and others who have been forbidden to access them.
I think it's pretty interesting because the trend across the nation is towards constitutional carry. I think the US is now at 23 or 24 states that have some form of constitutional carry in place.
Well, I know that that is true. And of course, Jim Fight, who writes for LibertyNation.com and is the gun law area is one of his focuses. I read that piece, and the thing that people have to understand is the constitutional carry thing is sort of like the how a sheriff gets elected. They don't have to take a class on having a gun. They just get to, they get elected, they swear, and they put on the gun belt. And why wouldn't that be good for an ordinary citizen? So there's no requirement that there's some character and fitness proof. It's just like the opposite. The burden is on the state to prove that the person shouldn't be allowed to carry, basically.
Well, it is the state that makes the laws.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott. And the other case that we want to talk about is the abortion case coming up. Now, this, again, there's been, I guess, 2 significant abortion cases before the Supreme Court in the last 50 plus years. Obviously.
Well, there's more than 2, but those are the landmarks, right? We've got Roe and we've got Casey.
So what does this latest case that's coming up before the Supreme Court that they're due to put a decision out on, how does this compare in scope to Casey and Roe v. Wade?
It has the potential to equal or eclipse them in scope, and that is why there's been so much attention paid to them. In any case, the Supreme Court can up and decide, some change in the law if enough justices agree, but seldom do they. Not only seldom do they agree, but seldom do they address an issue that's off the kind of direct path of the appellate issue challenged. And what we have it's Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health is the name of the abortion case. What we have in Dobbs is the Supreme Court has directly chosen to address whether or not these pre-viability abortion restrictions, we'll call them, are legal. Is it legal for a state to basically, restrict abortions prior to a certain number of weeks? So because of the broadness with which they've asked the question presented, anything could happen. We could get a full reversal of Roe. We could get nothing at all. We could, the court, it's one of these mysteries, right? What are they going to do? We'll see.
Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Mark.
That's almost it for this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I want to take a moment to thank our guests, Stefan Hegelson, Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, and Scott Cosenza. I'd also like to thank you, the listeners, for taking the time to join us. Now, my final thought for this week. Jack Kerouac wrote in On the Road, "This is the story of America. Everybody's doing what they think they're supposed to do." And in that sentence is the greatest hope and the most potential for danger. In a nation that seems so divided and polarized that more than at any point in recent history, we have different sects. Those who seek to live independently, to be their own people, and those that insist on collectivism, that you follow the ever-changing set of rules that no one has ever agreed upon. The individualists want no part of it. They seek to build a life of family, friends, and community, intent on thinking their own thoughts. But a radical element in society sees that as a danger. And herein lies the problem. These collectivists think they're doing the right thing. They think that bullying and coercing their fellow man to a collectivist will is moral. It's not enough for them to follow their own creed. They insist that all others toe the line too. This is not, and never was, the real American dream. But it may be the greatest danger facing it as we move forward into an unknown future. Thank you all for being here. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
Daily tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.